I wanted to cover some frequently asked questions and provide answers regarding bill drafting here in the state of California. For those who are not familiar, I tried to put together some questions and answers for the queries that I most often hear regarding bill drafting in California. So, first, which types of bills take effect immediately upon being signed by the governor? Statutes calling elections, statutes providing for tax levies, statutes providing for appropriations for the usual current expenses of the state, and urgency statutes go into effect immediately upon their enactment. Does an urgency clause bill require specific language? Yes. A statement of facts constituting the necessity is required to be set forth in one section of the bill. We generally refer to that as the urgency clause. Are there any limits on the types of urgency clause bills? Yes. An urgency statute may not create or abolish any office. It cannot change the salary, terms, or duties of any office. And an urgency statute cannot grant any franchise or special privilege. And finally, an urgency statute cannot create any vested right or interest. Is there any limitation on bond issuances or constitutional amendments by the legislature? Yes, those cannot include or exclude any local areas of the state from the measure's provisions based upon whether that local area approved or disapproved the measure, or based upon the casting of a specified percentage of votes in favor of the measure. Is there a single subject rule for legislation? Yes. The Constitution says that a statute shall embrace but one subject, which shall be expressed in its title. What is the reenactment rule? It provides that a code section, that is, a section of a statute, may not be amended unless the section is reenacted as amended. What does the budget bill need to include? The budget bill itself must be accompanied by a bill that itemizes recommended expenditures. Can any bill include multiple appropriations? No, only the budget bill may contain more than one item of appropriation. What is the vote threshold for an appropriation from the general fund? It's 2/3, except appropriations for the public schools and appropriations in the budget bill and in other bills providing for appropriations related to the budget bill. What are other bills providing for appropriations related to the budget bill? They consist only of the bills that are identified as being related to the budget that are specified in the budget bill that is passed by the legislature. Are all bills required to be of general application? As a general rule, yes. Bills have uniform operation, but a local or special statute is allowed only in the case where a general statute cannot be made applicable. What is the purpose of a bill's title? The title of every bill introduced is intended to convey an accurate idea of the contents of the bill and also indicate the scope of the bill and the ultimate enactment and the object that is to be accomplished. Does each code section require a separate bill section? Yes. A bill amending more than one section of an existing law must contain a separate section for each section amended. Do legislative rules dictate how to draft code sections? Yes. For example, bills that are not amendatory or amending existing state laws must be divided into short sections where they can be done without destroying the sense of any particular section, to the end that future amendments may be made without the necessity of setting forth and repeating sections of unnecessary length. Must an introduced bill include certain aspects or parts? Yes. A bill may not be introduced unless it is contained in a cover that's been attached by the Legislative Council and that's accompanied by a digest that's prepared and attached to the bill by the Office of Legislative Counsel, which shows the changes in the existing law that are proposed by this bill. Does the Legislative Council's digest have to be changed when a bill has been amended? As a general rule, the Legislative Council must prepare an amended digest to show changes in the existing law that are proposed by the bill as amended, with any material changes in the digest that are indicated by the use of the appropriate type. Can a bill be amended to just add a co-author? Well, the rules provide that an amendment is not in order when all that would be done to the bill is the addition of a co-author or co-authors, unless the Rules Committee of either house in which that amendment is to be offered has granted prior approval to do so. How does the Office of Legislative Counsel determine whether a bill should be re-referred to the Fiscal Committee? If you look at Joint Rule 10.5, it asks whether the bill would appropriate money, result in a substantial expenditure of state money, result in a substantial increase or loss of revenue to the state, or result in substantial reduction of expenditures of state money by reducing, transferring, or eliminating any existing responsibilities of any state agency, program, or function. Can a bill title include the name of a legislator? No. Under today's rules, a bill may not add a short title that names a current or former member of the legislature. Does a bill contain information regarding who asked the legislator to author the bill? No. In fact, the rules provide that a bill may not indicate in its heading or anywhere elsewhere in the bill that it was introduced at the request of a state agency or officer or any other person. In fact, a bill may not contain the words by request or any other words of similar import. How is bill language distinguished between adding, amending, or repealing statutory language? Well, if new matter is added by the amendment, the new matter is printed in italics in the printed bill. If matter is omitted, the matter to be omitted is printed in strikeout type. Where are bill drafting rules found? From the California Constitution, the Government Code, the joint rules of the two houses, and the Office of Legislative Counsel's drafting manual. Are bills presumed to apply both prospectively and retroactively? No. The presumption, in fact, is that once they become a statute, they are applied prospectively, unless there is clear evidence that the legislature intended the statute to apply retroactively. Do all parts of a bill must all parts of a bill reasonably be germane to the introduced version? Yes. Amendments are supposed to be reasonably germane to a common theme or subject, which is commonly known as the single subject rule. What is a state mandated local program? Well, if a statute would require a city or a county to do a new program or provide a higher level of service on an existing program, then it's deemed by the Office of Legislative Counsel to be a state mandated local program. Now, Government Code Section 17575 requires this, as well as for the Legislative Council to make this determination known in the digest, the Legislative Council's digest of the bill. Does a bill enact codified or uncodified statutes? Both. A statute can enact both codified and uncodified provisions of law. Codified means the statute is found in one of California's 29 codes, while of course uncodified means the statute is not found in one of those codes. What is chaptering out and how does a bill address it? Well, chaptering out refers to when a later enacted statute chapters out or it repeals an earlier enacted statute from from the same or different legislative session. It is addressed by double jointing amendments. Does the Office of Legislative Counsel advise the legislature and all of the constitutional officers? No. It only advises the legislature and the governor, as well as state agencies, but not the other constitutional offices. What is the purpose of the Legislative Council's digest? The digest is intended to be an objective description of existing law and what the bill proposes to do to existing law. Who determines a bill's digest keys? That is from the attorneys in the Office of Legislative Counsel. If the fiscal committee digest key is marked yes, what happens to the bill? The bill will be re-referred to the fiscal committee, but does not have to be voted upon there. Also, the committee can waive a review of the bill. What is the difference between a spot bill and an intent bill? Spot bills contain non-substantive changes to an existing statute, whereas intent bills contain a sentence expressing legislative intent to enact a specific type of bill. What are the three types of legislative measures? Bills, which enact statutes. Resolutions are used to express the view of the legislature. And note there are three types: House, concurrent, and joint. And the third one is constitutional amendments, which the legislature uses to place a proposed addition, amendment, or repeal of the Constitution before the statewide electorate. What is a tax levy bill? A tax levy changes the base rate or burden of a state tax. And the Legislative Council indicates in the title and digest of the bill whether the bill is a tax levy. What does contingent enactment mean? It means that there is a section in a bill indicating that that section of the bill is to become operative only upon the enactment of another measure. What does double jointing mean? Double jointing amendments are amendments to a bill providing that the amended bill does not override or chapter out the provisions of another bill where both bills propose to amend the same section of law. Do all legislative measures have a relating clause? No. Only bills are required to have a relating clause. Therefore, resolutions and constitutional amendments do not. Does a tax increase bill require a higher vote threshold? Yes. A bill that imposes a new tax or increases an existing tax requires a 2/3 vote. Do enacted bills affect all cities in the same manner? As a general rule, a charter city is exempt from legislative control, except for matters that are of statewide concern. When is the general effective date for a new statute? The general rule is January 1 of the following year after enactment, unless the bill is one of the four types that take effect immediately. But note that they can have a later operative date. Otherwise, the default operative date is January 1 or the effective date of the bill. What is the difference between intent statements and findings and declarations? Generally, findings and declarations are affirmative statements explaining the basis for a bill's provisions, whereas intent statements explain how the legislature intends the bill's provisions to be interpreted or implemented. Does a bill addressing a fiscal emergency need to contain any specific provisions? Yes. A bill addressing a fiscal emergency must contain a statement regarding the fiscal emergency. Does a bill have to contain an enacting clause? The requirement for a bill to have an enacting clause is contained in the Government Code. It's Government Code Section 9501.5, which provides that every bill must have the following enacting clause. Quote, "The people of the state of California do enact as follows," end quote. Do California codes contain any statutory construction guidelines? Yes, in most instances, the general or preliminary provisions of the different codes contain rules for statutory construction or interpretation of those statutes. And this is done pursuant to Government Code Section 9603. And finally, my final Q&A here is, can any existing statute be repealed? The general rule is that any statute may be repealed at any time. However, note that Government Code Section 9606 says that a statute may not be repealed when vested rights would be impaired. So those are my Q&As for bill drafting here in the state of California.